Hey, everybody, help us out. Please subscribe, bottom right.
All right, Chris Speaks back here today on our weekly BCS State of Alabama with my partner in crime, Brandon Mosley. We've really started getting a lot of views here, and at first it was just me and Brandon sitting around talking, but I guess we figured people, as much as they love to hear us speak, we would probably get
And we
somebody
were
who knew what they were
boring the
talking
audience
about.
pretty quick.
Yeah. Between me and him and a couple of friends, the audience didn't grow, but we've had Commissioner Pate on, politician from Canada, Congressman Brooks, and now we have
Bo
today,
Brooks.
yeah, but Congressman Brooks, 2022 candidate for governor, and now the 2026 candidate for lieutenant governor here in the Republican primary, the Reverend Dean Odle. Dean, my man, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. How are y'all doing?
Great. So, what we'll do is I'll ask you first two, and Brandon will ask you two, and we'll kind of bounce it back and forth.
All right.
So Dean, man, you're in the lieutenant governor's race this time. Why not just run for governor again?
Well, after I ran for 2 years, I campaigned longer, I think, than any of them, and 2 solid years and 80,000 miles, and I was exhausted. Didn't really think after I did that I was ever going to do it again. Didn't know, I was going to stay involved in the political fight, on the conservative side of things, but I just didn't know what that was going to look like. And so, after a long campaign like that, you need some rest and some prayer time and everything else. But I think about a year later, after the campaign, probably sometime in 23, I went to the Bama Carey meeting when Chris Ann Hall was speaking. And as she was speaking about the Constitution and the 10th Amendment and all those things, I realized, I just sat there and kind of thought, I talked about every bit of that in my campaign speeches and across the state. And then I just felt, and some people don't understand this, but once again, I just felt the Holy Spirit come on me and say, you're going to run for lieutenant governor. And I was like, okay. So I spent the next year and a half to 2 years trying to convince the Lord that to talk him out of it, that I didn't want to do it. And so, but I didn't want to end up like Jonah. So I just feel it's what the Lord wants me to do. And I think, again, it's, like last time, I was speaking truth to our political leaders, truth that they didn't want to hear, truth that a lot of the media censored me for, lost my YouTube channel, terminated at that time. I was censored all over the place because I was talking about, the early treatment protocols for COVID and, of course, some other things. And so, Mike Kaysen at AL.com admitted that they were censoring me because of that. And, but everything that I talked about in 2020 to 2022 has been proven to be true. I mean, now even ivermectin that got poo-pooed on his horse pace is now curing cancer, and the studies are coming out for that. So I feel pretty vindicated in that I was looking ahead to the right experts and the right doctors from Harvard and Yale and so on that were talking, speaking against the establishment. And whether you do that in the political realm or you do it in the medical, pharmaceutical realm, they don't like it if you're not, speaking their narrative, if you're coming against them. So you get censored or you get attacked or whatever. So, but I just felt like, the Lord said lieutenant governor, and I'm okay with that. I just feel like, that would be an interesting position because you're president of the Senate. You appoint a lot of board commissions on, different board members on different commissions. And also you get to be part of the committee, the small committee that gets to decide what's going to be in the next legislative session that you're going to have. So, and of course, the lieutenant governor has a tremendous bully pulpit to, speak to the press and try to influence our legislators in a certain direction or influence the governor in a certain direction. So, and I'm okay with being, I don't have to be number one. I can be number two. You know, I'm not just wanting to be a hot shot. I just want to be involved. And as a minister, as a Christian, I just try to do what the Lord leads me to do and obey him.
So, Dean, tell me, what's the most important issue facing our state, in your opinion?
Well, in my opinion, I mean, it's corruption, but that is a broad term. I think the corruption is across the board when it comes to the ability of our politicians to take dark money, and we don't know where it comes from. In 2018, the Attorney General, Steve Marshall, took a PAC-to-PAC transfer of $750,000 to his campaign, which is absolutely illegal. But the powers that be allowed him to slip through and continue to be the attorney general. And to me, that just tells you the level of corruption. In my election against, in the 2022 primary, Kay Ivey took 1.7 million in dark money that we don't know where it came from. That should be illegal. I mean, if we're going to have unlimited campaign contributions, we should at least know who is giving to these politicians at minimum. And that's what I was up against. And then I found out in 2018, it was reported widely in the Alabama press in 2018 that they tracked down some of the PACs that Kay Ivey and Walt Maddox were getting their campaigns from, and actually traced some of that money, about somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million, to George Soros that he gave to that PAC. I think it was one of those PACs, of Nichols PACs over in Tuscaloosa, T-Town PAC or Pride PAC or something like that. But anyway, you know, Soros money went to about 600,000 went to Maddox, and 100,000 of it went to Kay Ivey. And so I see corruption across the board. I also believe firmly that corruption goes all the way to our voting system, both our voting machines that we use, the SNS tabulators, the Dell laptops that are used at the county courthouse to tabulate all the precincts. I believe firmly that we've got to get rid of the voting machines and go to paper ballots and hand counting like they do in Germany and France and Canada and about 100 other countries, so that there can't be any manipulation of our votes. And I saw the manipulation of voting in my election. One of the blips we saw was 30,000 votes go from Kay Ivey to Tim James, and then from Tim James back to Kay Ivey in about 4 minutes in real time. There was also Kay Ivey was polling at 40% before 2 weeks before the primary. So somebody was going to put her in a runoff, probably not me, but maybe Tim or Lindy. And all of a sudden she gets a spike, a dump of about 80,000 votes at about 9:15, just like Biden did in the 2020 election. And so there was, and this is just one thing, but I've had some cyber experts like Clay Parikh, who is the 20-year cyber forensics expert who testified in Haynes v. Merrill, many other court cases across the country as an expert witness. He's documented the anomalies in the 2022 election. So it's not just because I was affected, or Lindy or Tim, but this idea that Alabama elections machines and systems are totally secure and perfect and wonderful and the gold standard, like Wes Allen and John Merrill try to claim, when they have Chinese components in them. And the three CEOs of all the voting machine companies that, the primary voting machine companies, I think, that cover like 85% of votes in America, those three main companies testified before Congress that there are either major components in their machines or the entire machines are made in China, full of Dell and Chinese-made components. And if there's Chinese components made there in that supply chain, then they can put something as small as the tip of a pencil lead in there that can turn the machine on, make it remotely controlled. All of this has been testified in court. Colonel Sean Smith, cyber expert at the Pentagon for many years, he's a retired Air Force colonel. He testified in court, many court cases, to this fact. So for John Merrill and Wes Allen to run around saying our elections in Alabama are secure when the machines we use, ES&S, are full of Chinese components, is either horrid ignorance or they're part of the corruption. I don't know. But they don't flip every vote in Alabama. They don't have to, just the important ones. And, Kay Ivey was on the top of the list of China's favorite governors. She's had.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. She's on China's. That's Pompeo put that out before he left office in 2020 about China had a list of their most favored governors, and Kay Ivey was at the top of the list. And we know she took a call from the Chinese consulate general who got thrown out of the country as a Chinese spy by Trump, and that there's been other Chinese connections that I think are serious and questionable. So to me, it's the corruption issue, the dark money. Jeb Bush got caught in 2016 taking 1.3 million from a Chinese couple up in I think they lived in DC area, Bethesda area, and he took 1.3 million. And then you start looking at this, and this is not just from me. This is Peter Schweitzer, New York Times bestselling author. He wrote the book Red Handed, where he talks about how many of our elected officials are taking money from the Chinese and benefiting from the Chinese and lobbying for the Chinese. And he said both, and he shows both Republicans and Democrats are doing this. And that money's flowing in through to Chinese nationals here and some Chinese that have gotten citizenship. And then they dole it out to pack stuff to the politicians in different states who are going to do things to benefit China or promote China. And we know that Bob Riley and his crew and John Merrill's been highly connected to China and to these people. So I see that there's some really dark corruption and dark money coming into Alabama. And to me, that's got to be exposed and it's got to be stopped.
Dean, John Merrill has said that the voting machines do not have modems on them, and I think the legislature has actually made it illegal to have a vote tabulator with a modem on it. So if it's not connected to the internet, how could the Chinese or anyone else manipulate the numbers? What the tabulators do.
Well, John Merrill is a liar, because I'm just going to put it out to you straight. The voting machines do connect to the internet. And in the court case, Haynes v. Merrill, you can look at the lawyers who handled it, the Alabama Law and Liberty lawyers, on their website about Haynes v. Merrill, that court case, which I was there for the whole 8 hours of testimony that day. Of course, John Miller didn't show up, but in his depositions, he had to back off when they pressed him. He was running around the state and running around saying the machines don't connect to the internet. Well, guess what? He had to backtrack on that and admit that they do connect to the internet and send their results into the county courthouses via the internet. Now, there's an NBC article that came out just a few years ago where the ES&S was saying that none of their machines connected to the internet, but when the government, Homeland Security, and CISA did a test on several systems, they found 10 states that had ES&S systems that connected to the internet, even though ES&S were saying they didn't. But here's the problem. Let's just say that you're correct and the ES&S tabulators do not connect to the internet. There's a problem. There is a state purchase order that was submitted as evidence in Haynes v. Merrill, signed by John Merrill, a letter signed by John Merrill, and where he was sending a new Dell laptop to every probate judge for every county to tabulate their votes. In the specs on the Dell laptop and on the purchase order from the state of Alabama, it gives the specs on the Dell laptop that it has both Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connection. So guess what? That Wi-Fi Bluetooth chip that's in there, guess where it's made? I've got a picture of it. Made in China. Okay. Also, I was told by my polling people here, I asked them when I voted in 2024, I said, how do you guys send the tabulated results from this machine that I just put my vote in to the Lee County Courthouse? They said by internet. All right. So either people are crazy, lying out of their teeth in different directions. But let me tell you, that state purchase order and that letter from John Merrill that he sent those Dell laptops to every probate judge, that was presented as evidence in a court case. So John Merrill knows he's lying. I don't know why he's lying. He's either ignorant as the day is long, playing the narrative. He sounds just like a Democrat, mind you, but playing the narrative, or he's part of the corruption. And that's just bottom line. And the reason he backtracked when he was pressed by the lawyers is because he knew if he got caught lying, that perjury was going to be a possibility there. So again, John Merrill is the slickest politician in this state, and you know it, and I know it. He's talented, gifted at what he does, at schmoozing the people, but I wouldn't trust him as far as I could throw him. And any man that any man that's going to be cheating on his wife, I don't know if you can, if she can't trust him, none of us can.
Dean, the the much of the powers that used to be lieutenant governor were taken away in 2003 when, all of a sudden the first Republican won lieutenant governor, Steve Wyndham. And of course, the Republicans, when they took control in 2010, they didn't give them back to the, Republican lieutenant governor, Kay Ivey at the time. Do you think we need to restore the historical powers, lieutenant governor, where they assign bills to committee, assign members of the Senate to committees?
Yeah, I do. I mean, if you look, that's the power the speaker has in the House. I think the lieutenant governor should have the same power in the Senate. And I know that's some political maneuvering, but I did, the other day I was at the State House to view some of the bills that they were talking about on the House floor, and I did go meet with Lieutenant Governor Ainsworth for a few minutes, and he and I are getting to know each other over the last few, we butted heads last time pretty hard, but we kind of in that butting heads, we kind of got to know each other a little bit, but we sat down and I asked him some questions about, okay, what does the lieutenant governor do? What real power do they have? And he shared some things with me about the true power of that office. So it does still have some power and relate, he said, instead of having all the power to, like before, to appoint, committee chairs and things of that nature, you sit kind of on a council where you're part of that process. But I do believe the full power should be restored as it was, because I believe that would be fair. If the speaker has that power in the House, then the president of the Senate ought to have that power as well.
Dean, we've seen some. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brandon.
Okay, Dean. A big issue that we've been facing for the past, really since Kay Ivey got reelected, is education and how some of our scores, have been sort of lacking. I know the lieutenant governor does have enormous power over, education and what schools do. How do you think we should improve our educational performance in the state? What are we doing wrong here?
Yeah, well, I wrote an article about that during the last campaign because, I was for what was called a no strings attached school choice voucher system, because basically if you don't do that across the board with no limitations, I mean, any family can do it, right? You give about a $10,000 voucher or whatever, because I think we spend about $12,000 per child, but you say you give a $10,000 voucher to every parent and let them choose what school they want to take their children to. Now, what that's going to do is there's of course, going to be people who want to go to private schools or whatever. A lot of people are going to want to go to their public schools for the football or different services or whatever. But what's going to happen is that if you let the true free market take over, instead of government controlled, central government, whether state central government or do that, if you let that take over, then what's going to happen is the bad schools are going to not get any of the money. I mean, people are not going to want to take their kids to the bad schools. They will begin to disappear. The good schools will get better because there will be competition for people to come there. Just like, I mean, really, it's capitalism. If we don't introduce real capitalism into our school system, then we're going to keep getting the socialist problem, the communist problem of mediocrity or total failure. But capitalism, free market, that's what works. And if we would apply it to the school system, their tax dollars that they spent, that get spent on every child, if we would just give that back to the parents not in cash, but as a voucher where they had to take it and use it at a school somewhere. Or, and then just exclude homeschoolers because they don't want any strings on them at all. If you do that, then guess what? You will break it down. And this is why I had a problem with the previous school choice bill. I said, the problem is what we're going to do is we're going to help a few, a percentage of kids, and that's good to help some of those that are struggling or in bad schools. And it's good to help a few, but you're not going to change the system if you don't implement true free market capitalism into the public school system. Now, AEA and NEA and everybody, they're terrified of that. And they try to fight and pull strings because they say, if you do that, you're going to destroy public education. No, what you're going to do is truly privatize it to the point you're going to destroy the socialist grip, the communist grip on our education system, and the free market will take over. And the free market always does things always better than government controlled things. It's just a fact. I mean, so I say the school choice bill did not go far enough. It implemented new government. And I had a plan where I talked about all you need. We could get rid of the state board of education. You wouldn't even need it. You would let there still be county boards, but let those boards be parents. Those board members would have to be parents who have children in the school. They would elect their chairman of the board, and they would be a part of hiring and firing of teachers and administrators. And but it'd have to be parents in that school, and that way you ensure parent involvement, you ensure accountability, and you get rid of a lot of the bureaucracy and red tape. And look at the money. Think about 67 counties. Think about this. They just wanted to give a raise to the state superintendent when we are still at the bottom. And I just marvel at the nonsense. But that's, if you want to look at communism and socialism in our country, it's our public school system.
Dean, shouldn't we have some kind of uniformity though? Because if we turn everything back over to, say, individual counties and cities, what's to stop some rogue, county, like, say, I know this is probably not in Alabama, but like up on, what is it? God, the county in Michigan where it's over, where it's predominantly Muslim now. I mean, would you be okay if the money went back and, like we had a county there that was teaching that? Would that be okay?
Well, again, we're a country of freedom of religion. And so I would be fine with that. But see, again, that's not going to be a majority of Americans in any state. That's going to be a small minority there. But if they're citizens here and they're paying taxes here, then they should have the same right as me or you or anybody else. We shouldn't discriminate because of their religion. And trust you me, I'm not pro Islam at all. I know what there's Muslims that are peaceful Muslims that don't follow the teachings of Muhammad to their extreme. And then we have what we call the Muslim extremists. And so you're talking about a group that's even smaller. But here's the thing, in a free market system, if not enough parents send their kids to that school, then that school's going to fail and it's going to go away.
Well, are we not leaving, like what we're talking about with capitalism, and I guess the cream of the crop rising are we not leaving some children behind by doing this though?
No, here's the beautiful thing. Think about if we got rid of a bunch of the red tape and a bunch of the budget that we wouldn't have to. Say you give $10,000 instead of paying 12, you're saving $2,000 per child. You keep the special ed programs. You keep all of that. I mean, I know people who, they have their master's and doctorate degrees in special education or orthopedic impaired, things of that nature. You keep that going by the money you're going to save by doing this. And see, here's the thing. Let's just say we spend 12, it may be 13,000 now. I hadn't looked at the latest numbers, but let's say you give 8 or whatever, you're still saving, you could save 5,000 per child and still fund all that very easily.
One last one, I'll quit that, Brandon. So you fully support turning the Department of Education back to the states. I mean, I think
Oh
that's
yeah.
one of the greatest things President Trump has done is taking away that bureaucracy there.
Yeah, that thing's useless. Yeah. It's only been a point of trying to control, and really not just control. Everything needs a certain amount of control, but it's been a place where indoctrination and also too obscenity. I mean, just pornography, things that came down through Obama's Common Core curriculum that was mandated down through from the federal government. I mean, there was books that they were having our kids read that was absolute perversion. I looked in it, some
Yeah.
promoting rape, promoting pedophilia, incest, all kinds of things. And I mean, it's just like, I don't want my child. One reason I never let, I've got a 15-year-old. I've got two that are in their 20s, one about to be 30. They never set foot in public school. They never went one day. And the reason I said they're not going is because I wasn't going to allow them to be indoctrinated with perversion and with communism. And that's what got hold of our education system a long time ago. And it was the Soviet Union's plan to do that. And they implemented it over many years. I mean, uh, the guys that have come out that defected from over there said that, yeah, that was their plan, and they succeeded. They succeeded in getting into our universities, and then they got into our public school system via the federal government. And it was both Republican and Democrat. And Bush family, the Clintons, the Obamas, it all came down through them. And it's evil. And it's why we're at the bottom. I mean, I don't think Alabama school children are somehow dumber than other kids or not as smart or whatever you want to say. It's just a bad system. And that's why really, I mean, across the board, the United States doesn't rank anywhere near the top in education. So the problem is our system. And to me, I look at this, I'm a pragmatic kind of guy. You see something that's not working, you don't put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. It's not working. We've got to do something drastic to change course completely. Now, that's why I like what Trump is doing this time. He's taking drastic measures to change some institutions that have been getting away with theft and murder and everything else you can imagine, like USAID. I mean, I never thought in my lifetime I would see somebody tackle an institution like that was so corrupt and take it down. So I see the public school system as a problem, as an indoctrination factory, as a failure. Therefore, we need something radically different if we're going to be better.
Dean, 5 years ago, we were told by the Ivy administration that to deal with our prisons, we needed to build two mega prisons at a cost of $880 million. After the legislature passed that, allowing them to give no bid contracts, to the companies building the prisons, the one in Elmore County, I'm being told, is going to cost us, before it's all said and done, $1.4 billion by itself. And we don't even have a general contractor yet for the one in Escambia County. Do we need to have a much more serious requirement that contracts for things like schools or mega prisons be bid out?
Of course, this has been going on in Alabama far too long. This no bid, let me help my buddy stuff. What I was amazed at last time when Governor Ivy first started talking about these prisons, and she got her little group together and they discussed it, and went over it. Now their research, right, picked one of the worst companies. Now I can't remember the name of it right now, but the company they picked, and I remember talking about this 5 years ago.
Dale Construction out of Montgomery is building the Elmore County prison.
Yeah. Now it changed, but there was a company that they had picked that builds and runs prisons, and they manage it in the whole 9 yards. Private.
Yeah.
And the company she picked at the time, the first company they picked that were going to do this, happened to be the worst company in the United States for building prisons and managing prisons. They had constant complaints of horrible administration, horrible management, horrible sodomy, rape, all kind of stuff going on that they did not manage, even among their own guards and personnel. And I sit here, I remember thinking, how do you form a committee to find the best prison management company and builders, and you end up with the worst one where Tennessee and several other states were saying, do not use this company, whatever you do. I don't know who's advising her on these things, but it's insanity. But no bid contracts is just another form of political and financial corruption that's in our government. It should be open. It should be out there for bid. We should take, I used to work for a big construction company. I worked for CF Halstead when I was a young man. One of the things I did for them was take bids to these big projects and sit around a table, and each of us would hand the bid in and they'd look and find who had the lowest bid, and boom. I mean, that's who got it. Um, uh, it's just common sense. If we really care about saving the taxpayer money, that's what we should do. But and stopping corruption. There's too many ways that these projects blow up, and then government money goes. Let's say it's like you said, it's 1.4 billion now, but it was supposed to be what, 800 million.
It's supposed to be 880 million
Yeah.
for two, and we're looking at about 2.6 billion for two.
Yeah, there's so much room there for wiggle room for fraud and kickbacks, that it's just scary. And if it's not done by open bids and choosing it that way, then you're going to have people that'll go along with you, contractors and people that'll go along with the deals that they make. And I mean, frankly, we know it goes on. It's been going on for decades here. Decades. I think every campaign I listened to, and I'm talking about, I paid attention to campaigns when I was 16 years old and couldn't even vote yet. And I remember thinking, always hearing about, oh, we got to get rid of these no bid contracts, and that'd be in campaign commercials, and they never do it. Never do it. So it's got to be done. And I don't expect, tell you the truth, I'm glad Ivy is termed out finally, because she will never do something that's going to be transparent and stop I would say the whole systemic corruption that's in this state, because she's benefited from it.
And we've seen the federal courts begin to take a more, I guess, states' rights approach with sending abortion and school prayer back to states. Do you think they should do that with the gay marriage? Because it seems like once that got legalized, that this trans stuff just popped up everywhere and is being shoved down everybody's throats. And is this like demons that's possessing these people? I mean, because this is not normal, man.
Yeah. Now, you got into two realms there, but you get in the theological realm and the political realm.
I didn't mean we'll get into that a little bit later. We'll stay on the religious part, because me and Brandon has talked about how this is just demon possessed. But so, do you think this should go back to the states?
Yeah, I think a lot of things need to go back to the states. I mean, the 10th Amendment is very clear, and the principle that unless it is specifically given to the federal government in the Constitution, I mean, they are specifically spelled out, this is a power they have, then they're not supposed to do it. It's supposed to go to the states. And that was one of the things I talked about all the time when I was running for governor last time, how we need a governor that would stand up and really invoke the power of the 10th Amendment. And a lot of these things coming down from the federal government are just absolutely unconstitutional. And it should be left to the states to do. And I agree. I'm glad to see the Supreme Court moving in that direction, because that's what they should have been doing for the last 30 or 40 years, and they hadn't been doing that.
Dean, you were very outspoken during the COVID pandemic about your concerns about the safety of the COVID vaccine, or the side effects that came from it. Here recently, we've had a measles outbreak in Texas, and public health officials are concerned that the vaccine hesitancy you're getting from some parents now, due to their concerns over the COVID vaccine, has trickled down to measles, mumps, rubella, and the other vaccinated diseases. Do we need? What is your view on that?
All right. Very simply, I'll be honest with you that you hadn't heard of any so-called measles outbreak until the whole thing of seeing RFK Jr. get confirmed, and some of his positions on vaccines and the problems with vaccines. I think the timing of the outbreak is quite interesting. It may actually even be intentional. We have found, though, with the measles and with polio and with a lot of other things, that outbreaks actually will be they'll jump up, and they will happen when there's been a lot of vaccinations in that area. Actually, we found that the polio vaccine will actually cause a polio outbreak in an area. Here's the problem with vaccines. The principle of a vaccine, there's nothing wrong with the principle, okay, of the give a little bit of the virus to try to build an immunity so that you don't get a severe reaction to it. I understand the principle of a vaccine. The problem is how they are manufactured and what is allowed to be in the vaccines. And I have looked at hundreds and hundreds of studies. I have one book that has 400 peer-reviewed scientific studies in it. Bottom line is they put things like thimerosal, which is mercury, which is a neurotoxin, in the vaccines as a preservative. They put aluminum in there as an adjuvant to actually agitate the immune system to cause a greater response. Just those two ingredients. I won't go into any more. Those two ingredients have been linked to causing neurological problems like autism, and aluminum has been linked to also causing autism and causing Alzheimer's. One of the studies that I talked about last time was a study where they did autopsies on the brains of several older adults who died of severe Alzheimer's, last stage Alzheimer's, and they did autopsies on the brains of several young teenage autism children. And the only thing they did an intense study on their brains and what was in their brains. The only thing they found that was in common in their brains was high levels of aluminum in the brain. And that was both in the Alzheimer's patients and in the autistic patients. So here's the problem. I wouldn't have a problem with the measles vaccine if it didn't have thimerosal, aluminum, and other things like formaldehydes, polysorbate 80, all kinds of other things in it. And also, these vaccines, the MMR vaccine that you're referring, was taken from and created by the cells from an aborted fetus. So what you're also doing is putting the DNA of another human being in the body of these kids. One of the first studies I came across way back when was back in like the late 80s and early 90s, we were having an epidemic of kids who were dying of SIDS, sudden infant death syndrome. Okay, so not China, but Japan and Finland, and I think some other countries, but primarily Japan and Finland, decided that they were going to suspend infant and child vaccinations until the child was 2 years old. Just move it back 2 years. All right. Guess what happened? The SIDS rate in Japan and Finland went down 90%. Now, several years later, they decided to go back to the old way and start vaccinating infants again. and the SIDS rate went back right where it was before, went right back up. So we know that vaccinations, and it's not, again, the principle of vaccination, it's what's in the thing. But let me just tell you about the COVID vaccine. The evidence is coming out now, and that the COVID vaccine is causing blood clots. It's causing myocarditis, pericarditis. It's causing young people to die of heart attacks. It killed my sister, 46 years old, nothing wrong with her. She takes the vaccine, has a massive stroke and heart attack, and dies at 46. This has happened, and this has been documented now all across the world. Remember that Pfizer and Moderna wanted to hide the side effects that they found in their studies for 75 years from the public. They wanted a judge to bury that for 75 years. But guess what? Every side effect that the judge made remember the Pfizer papers came out. We're talking about tens of thousands of documents this judge ordered. They're in a book by Naomi Wolf called The Pfizer Papers. You can get them and read them all. All the side effects that they found in their studies that they wanted to hide from us in the middle of COVID were what we have seen. Now, that's why we saw a rash in 2021 of athletes in top physical condition dying of heart attacks on the soccer field, on the football field, on the basketball court. Young people. One of the top cardiologists, Peter McCullough, he warned, he said, this is going to be a deadly problem. I know Dr. Teresa Long publicly. She was seeing the vaccine injure our pilots down at Fort Rutger, and she cried out to the military there and her COs, we've got to stop giving this to our helicopter pilots. She was the Surgeon General. Really, all pilots in the military had to come through her. I had dinner with her. She spoke at my conference of, last year, or 23 conference. And she's going to be awarded. She just got awarded by President Trump for her standing up and fighting for that. But she exposed it. She showed me pictures of vaccine injuries on our special forces that were ending their careers, people in the special forces. So I could spend a whole hour just talking to you about the damage being done by the COVID vaccines. And the more boosters a person gets, the more they're likely to develop cancer or blood clots. There's a mortician here in Alabama. I can't remember his name right off the cuff, but a friend of mine just interviewed him on their podcast. But he's the one that found the huge, long, stringy blood clots in people who died right after they took the vaccine. So I wouldn't let my dog take the COVID vaccine. And just so you know, I'm going to say this. You say, well, some people took it and they were fine. Yeah, because there were 3 batches. And this has come out. This is public. They did 3 batches, one more severe, one less severe, and one with saline. So a lot of people didn't even get a COVID vaccine. They got saline because they were using us as absolute guinea pigs. So that's my answer about this vaccine hesitancy stuff is ridiculous. We should be hesitant about putting anything in our bodies that is clearly a neurotoxin or brain altering. And thimerosal, mercury, and aluminum are not good for the human brain. And we used it used to be, I mean, you go back to the 80s and 90s, we used to have 1 in about 20 or 30,000 kids would have autism. Now we're in 1 in 20 have autism. And the only thing that's changed then, in 86, we had about this many, a short little list of vaccines, a handful. Now we got a massive list of vaccines. These kids are getting overloaded with toxic things that are in the vaccines. And so I'm 100% behind RFK Jr. doing a study to prove what's going on with this whole thing.
It's made me wonder, because you should see my shot record from the Army. And a few months ago, I got diagnosed with a neurological disease, and nobody in my family on either side has ever had a neurological disease. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know if it was that, and it could have been the burn pits. I was around there too. Sorry, sorry, I didn't mean to get off talk. Moving along. So I want to go back on something you touched on earlier, Dean, about it seems like election security is a big problem in our country. And you was talking about the Chinese parts in the machine. Do you think the Chinese are deliberately influencing our voting boxes?
If you were our enemy and you wanted to undermine our country and you had a long-term plan, what would you do if you could? We know that they have hacked. They have hacked Homeland Security, the Department of the Treasury. According to Colonel Sean Smith, they used to hack our most sophisticated weapon systems and turn them on. And we'd have to have teams of cybersecurity people on that to turn them back off. We know they have back doors in the machines. They hijacked and hacked into all the telecom companies. They did Apple and Google. If they can hack into the most secure military situation, they hacked CISA at Homeland Security for 10 months and they didn't know they were hacked. This is what I'm talking about. China can hack into anything that they built, and it ought to scare the hell out of us because we have gotten way too dependent upon Chinese chips and components in everything. They could shut down our grid tomorrow if they wanted to. But China is playing the long game right now. And I believe they have multiple fronts. It's called what do they call it? Disintegration warfare is what they call it. And it's piece by piece by piece. The
Okay.
fentanyl, the fentanyl coming into our country is all the components are produced by China. They are working with the cartels to get that into our country to kill as many people as possible. In fact, it should be looked at as an absolute act of war, what they're doing with fentanyl. But they have multi-pronged attacks going with cyber hacking, fentanyl, infiltration of our government, all the way from the federal government down to the state level. They infiltrate and have influence operations and fangs and all kind of stuff that are all over the place. And they are preparing for war for the United States. And really, we're at war. COVID was a biological weapon from China to weaken us and to maximize death in our country. And they pushed policies that would maximize the death in our country. And I mean, it's just if you and again, all this is documented. The book Red Handed by Peter Schweitzer and his sequel, Blood Money, shows how all of this has been happening. We've had generals warning about how China is using this drug war where they're flooding our country with these drugs via the southern border and through their shipping, you know, that they have. That's why Clinton gave over a lot of our ports to Chinese control. They've been shipping drugs into our country to weaken our country. They ship drugs, 96% pure opium, heroin into Vietnam to weaken our soldiers and morale in Vietnam, and it worked. I mean, it's all documented, and they're doing the same thing, but they are highly dedicated. They have entire high-rise buildings. There's nothing full of except professional hackers that are working on hacking into companies and government institutions. And we forget Dell laptops are fully made in China. And if they take Taiwan, which is what they want to do, you know why they want to take Taiwan? Because Taiwan makes the super chips, the superconductors, and they want that. And if they take Taiwan, they will have a monopoly on those type of chips. And so this strategy that they have, they're very patient and very focused on the downfall of the United States. So if you can hack into Homeland Security and the Department of the Treasury, you're going to tell me for some reason that the voting machines and the Dell laptops used in our county courthouses are somehow have unhackable fairy dust sprinkled upon them? No, no. It's anything that we have computer wise that could be a security issue, a national security issue. which our voting is, because that determines who our leaders are going to be, and they're going to make the decisions. We need absolute separation from anything made in China. We need to make the computers, the systems ourselves. And for that matter, I don't believe the voting machine companies should be controlled by private companies.
Wait, so you mentioned Secretary Merrill, and do you think he's contacted with he's connected with the communist government
Yes, I
of
do.
China?
Yeah.
Like he's an agent with them?
I don't know, but I can tell you this much. Why do you think that they made him the economic chairman of the United States? What is it called? The United States Heartland and China Association.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that.
Oh yeah, he was. Just look it up. Look up.
Heartland. Okay.
Just Google John Merrill and China. It's United States. What is it? Oh, what is it called? It's United States Heartland and China Association. They made him the chairman of it, and he advocates for China, working with China, accepting China. Either again, he's ignorant as the day is long and doesn't understand that they are our enemy and we should not be doing business with them, or he's part of it. And then there's a little young lady that took him to China that I have connected to the Chinese consulate general. So let's just put it this way. I can't say what he is or what he isn't, but it's kind of interesting to me, or maybe a coincidence, that he has all these Chinese connections and he doesn't want to do anything about really securing our elections. That he acted more like a gatekeeper to me. And this is not something I wouldn't say to his face. In fact, I said to a lot of this to his face when he came to Lee County, and I called him on the carpet and he gave his little political speech at the Lee County Republican Party meeting, and he made the mistake of asking for if there are any questions. So I gave him some that totally exposed his nonsense. And it was so upsetting to him because he couldn't fight it. He couldn't deny it, what I was giving him. And they shut down the meeting because he was getting embarrassed real bad. And I don't trust him or Wes Allen because they voice the same narrative. They're like cookie cutter replicas that just play musical chairs. But I'm not saying he's a Chinese agent, but it sure looks suspicious.
Brandon?
Yes, Dean. NASA is like a major employer up in the Huntsville area. You know, they're leading the engineering effort on the space launch system that's supposed to take, man back to the moon and then maybe Mars beyond that. In the past, you've been critical of NASA. Have you moderated your position any there, or is it still an issue?
Well, you see, again, I think that's a misrepresentation of my position on NASA. My position is that being a government agency, they lie about certain things and they have waste. And there's some foolishness that goes on there. But they have a military application that's very important. Now, my conclusions about NASA have come from spending many days, and I'm talking about I have spent days where I get up in the morning with a cup of coffee and sit down at the computer and go through NASA technical manuals, reading them from beginning to end, and also looking at FOIA documents from NASA and the government space programs and all this stuff. So I have spent many hours of research into what NASA actually does and what they don't do. So just remember that there's a PR campaign so that they can keep getting $70 million a day to spend. And then there's what they actually do, which a lot of it is top secret. But what they actually do is reconnaissance missions. They're really part of the CIA spying over countries. That's what every program has been. We didn't go to the moon. That's absolutely easily provable now. There's hundreds of millions of people across the world that actually looked at the evidence without the American pride blinding them. And they've looked at the evidence and no, we didn't do it. We're not going back. If we do, it's going to be a show. Um, and bottom line is that, scientists before the alleged moon landing in 69, all scientists that were being honest believed that the moon was some type of plasma electric type of phenomena, and so on down the line. So what I'm saying is that I look at things when it comes to the nature of the heavens and the earth and the cosmos and everything at through the lens of the Bible, the scriptures, what it says about the creation, and I look at it through the lens of what I can actually find as documented truth. And I have documents that were top secret, formerly top secret, that have been declassified through FOIA request. And I've had read NASA technical manuals, and I know the truth. So I know what NASA does, and we need what they do. Okay. I know the BS that they tell us, some of the BS they tell us that they do that they don't do. So out of most people sitting in the room, I've probably spent more time than anybody I know actually looking at what they actually do and what they don't do. And I'm all for what they do. I mean, we need them to do these reconnaissance missions in what they call space too is it's a different phenomena than what they tell us. And we could go into all that. But bottom line, I know what they do. And listen to this. What's funny is people at the top of the food chain in NASA know what I'm saying is true because they admit it in their documents. But they don't want people on lower levels to know, and they don't want the public to know what they know. And because let me tell you what would happen. If NASA came out and actually told the full truth to the public about the nature of the heavens and earth, it would prove the Bible true in that there is a God. And most of that community is anti-God, anti-Bible, anti-Jesus, anti-Christ, we could say. That system is. So I'm sorry, but I don't believe that nothing exploded and created everything over 14 billion years. I don't believe we came from monkeys. I believe there is a God in heaven that created the heavens and the earth, and I believe that he made the heavens and the earth just like he said, and it's provable. And, that's why I've given lectures at conferences, and I have written a 479-page book that documents all this, that absolutely documents the evidence. And I have physics professors, former lieutenant colonels who taught at West Point. I have Navy missile instructors. I have captains who work for Schwarzkopf. I mean, I have so many educated people who are in high levels, doctors in physics, and high levels of our military that know I'm telling the truth and come to me and said, yeah, this is what it is. And so I know, again, the public's been deceived about a lot of things over the years, and one is about the nature of creation. And just because you have on a white robe and call yourself a scientist does not mean you're honest or telling the truth about everything. And NASA does not tell the truth about everything. I mean, you want to tell something that's ridiculous. I can send you the videos of them, NASA artists admitting that they Photoshop stuff, that they create these images and things. Like, it's funny at Christmas time, all of a sudden they'll find, a nebula that looks like a Christmas tree. Or Halloween, they actually find a nebula that looks like a skull. It's almost laughable what they come up with sometimes. But they admit their own people, just like the data analysis guy who did the blue marble that was on the first iPhones, right? The blue marble, a picture of Earth, admits this is what he said in an interview, and I have it. He said it's Photoshop because it has to be. Well, wait a minute. I thought we could go way out there and take a picture back on this thing. No, he was admitting all their pictures have to be photoshopped, they have to be doctored, or they're just what they call, look, you can go on their website and look at a lot of their images, and it says artist visualization or artist concept or or image, not photograph, but image, or composite. So what I'm getting at is NASA puts out a lot of BS, PR, and they have to justify milking the American taxpayer $70 million a day. Their operation are primarily spy operations, recon missions. Now they don't have to have as many pilots because they can use the X-37B as the spy plane reconnaissance vehicle instead of using the space shuttle. That's why the space shuttle went out, because they don't no longer have to fly over Russia and China to take pictures higher and faster than before. They can use the X-37B now. So all of this, again, I document in books coming from the National Reconnaissance Office, coming from NASA, coming from the Army Research Laboratory, coming from the Navy, the Air Force. I mean, this is, again, all very documented. If I went to court with this stuff, I would win if I had an honest judge.
Now, when you say
Dean,
stuff, Dean, I'm sorry, go ahead, Brandon.
Dean, you don't believe we went to the moon. Do you believe we've sent rovers to Mars and they're driving around the Mars surface?
No, I don't. It's a hoax. They got discovered where those things. There was a picture, and I pulled it off. I have it on I pulled it off NASA's website of a picture of Mars. You take that picture and you zoom in on one spot, and there's a little dead prairie dog there. So obviously they didn't tell us about the prairie dogs on Mars that can run around and survive on Mars, but there's a particular island called Devon Island that seems to match the topography that you see in the background of a lot of the rover shots, seem to match the background that they say is Mars. Well, guess what? On that little Devon Island in Canada that looks kind of red and looks kind of, there's little prairie dogs there. So NASA has been busted lying about stuff so many times. I mean, it's almost ridiculous, but you actually have to look past the mainstream media and actually go do some research yourself to find out that they admit some of these things. Just like all the telemetry data of the alleged moon landing, all of it. You would think that the most important event in man's scientific and technological advancement of going to the moon, that they would have all of that data, telemetry data and everything else saved in a earthquake proof, vault somewhere. Guess what? When people started asking for it, where is the telemetry data? Oh, it's all gone. It's all missing. These are facts. Why is it all missing? And then, of course, maybe you haven't seen the smoking gun of the documentary, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon by Bart Sabrell. If you haven't seen that, you should watch it. But within that, he requested from NASA, he requested some film footage of the 1969 moon landing that he could use in his documentary. Well, either a whistleblower at NASA or somebody made a horrible mistake. They sent him about 10 minutes of footage of the Apollo 11 astronauts, obviously at high altitude in low Earth orbit, but they were hovering in a balloon carried capsule. Again, I document all this, but they're using the circular window of the cabin and they're backing up in the cabin. They turn all the lights off, and this is all three. I mean, Neil Armstrong, they're all there. They're talking to Houston Control. They're talking, and they say they're using the window, the circular window that's looking down on the Earth, and they back up and they take the camera, they back up in the cabin, turn all the lights off, and try to tell us that that's the Earth in space. That's why there's never any stars shown. And they got caught saying that the camera was right up against the window, but then an astronaut's arm gets between the camera and the window in the shot. And then we find out that the dates, they were supposed to be halfway to the moon. When they uncover it, they turn the lights back on. They're just in low Earth orbit. It is the smoking gun that we didn't go to the moon, and it's actual NASA footage that got leaked from there. This has been out for many years. This is common knowledge. There's Rocketdyne scientists that have written books. NASA mooned America. We didn't go to the moon. And they admit just one ridiculous thing. One ridiculous thing is back then, it takes in a tremendous amount of power, electrical power, to send a TV signal out. Okay. So back then, to send a TV signal 240,000 miles back to the Earth, they could not have carried enough batteries the size of Volkswagen Bugs up there to actually have enough power to broadcast 240,000 miles back to Earth. It's ridiculous. It's also when they landed on the moon and the pictures they took, you've got a 10,000-pound thrust engine, right? Landing on the moon with 1/6 gravity of Earth. There should have been a blast crater underneath that thruster. Was not there. When they took pictures up, there were no moon dust even on the feet of the lander. The pictures they took were too perfect. And a lot of times you're asking who took the picture, because when they were leaving, there was a camera that followed them. We didn't have cameras like that back then. We didn't have cameras back then either that could survive 250 degrees Fahrenheit in the sun and negative 250 degrees in the shade up there. It is just so many things that's just absolutely ridiculous about this. And that's why, you know, right now, about 70% of Russians, and especially Russian young people, do not believe that we went to the moon. Two of the moon rocks that Neil Armstrong and the other guys gave to the Queen of Denmark or Sweden or somebody, two of the moon, they said, these are rocks from the moon, we're giving them. They actually tested them and they are a petrified tree. They're not rocks from the moon. Okay. So again, they've lied so many times. They've been busted so many times. What blows my mind is how so many people in America still buy this charade that they pulled off in 1969, which now looks like a bad, you know, special effects B or C movie. And it's not hard to figure out. But there's a lot of other things. The shadows going in multiple directions, showing different sources of light. Again, it's been absolutely proven to me that we didn't go, and that it was nothing but a hoax to try to get ahead of the Russians. It was more of a propaganda issue. But, you know, again, I don't care if people disagree with me. That's fine if you disagree. But I have reasons why I believe that. It's not just conspiracy theories. I've looked at actual footage from the moon landing and documents and evidence. And it just, to me, it's just they didn't do it, and they're not going to do it again. And now, if they dare put on another show, just like Elon Musk putting that car up in space, you know, the Tesla he put up in space, and man, the people who tear apart CGI and all this, it was so easy to do, and there were glitches that when he was doing it, where it showed the car was in a studio and stuff. So it's. You know, that's why Elon said, oh, it must be real because it looks so fake. But do we have, what's that?
When NASA shows us pictures of where they've discovered 6,000 planets that are orbiting other stars in the galaxy, is that all legit, or do you question that as well?
Oh, that right there. Here's what they see. Okay, and this is a fact. From our most powerful telescopes, all they see is a blip of light. Looks like a star twinkling. Okay, and if that star twinkles in a certain timely fashion, they say that's because there's a sun orbiting, you know, it's orbiting the sun, a sun of its own. When you really look at what they do, and then what they do is they give these theories to NASA artists, and NASA artists create a concept, and then they feed that to the public. Again, these are not my opinions. These are facts. I've got the footage where they show this is what it actually looks like from our telescope, and here's what our artists made it look like. And then they feed that out to the public as if they've got these zoomed in pictures of these new Earth-like planets, and it's all, pardon my French as a pastor, I just have to say it's bullshit. Real simple. And people love it and eat it up, but it is theories and artistry. It is nothing but them making a guess on why a star twinkles at a certain timely interval. That's it. And I've seen the footage and I've seen the process that they do in making the footage. I'll send it to you. I'll send you the video link. And you're going to go, wow, most of what comes out of NASA is nothing but artistry. They're great art. They got great art. Matter of fact, they hired a lot of people from Disney to work for them.
So then you was talking about space a while ago. So in your opinion, like when I'm looking up at the sky, is that like that's not never ending? I'm like looking at a wall almost. I mean,
What happens is,
doesn't.
according to the Bible says when God, on the second day of creation, God made a thing called the firmament. And according to the Bible, it is
The firmament.
the firmament. The Hebrew word is
Okay.
rakia. And according to the scriptures, both in Genesis and in the book of Job and in the book of Revelation and in other places, and the word rakia means something that the Lord beat out into a dome shape and that it's made of molten glass. So on the second day of creation, God makes the firmament. He says there's waters below the firmament, which is the streams and rivers and oceans and things in our atmosphere. And he says that above the firmament are the heavenly waters, where he opened the windows of heaven to let them down to flood the earth in the days of Noah. And he said he attached the stars to the firmament, and that within the firmament, the sun and the moon move in a circular path over the earth. Now, this is what's clearly written in Psalm 19. Now, we don't know the altitude of this, how high this firmament goes, but what we do know as we approach about 50,000 feet, we start getting into what I call, and the ancients called, the ether. And in fact, the ether was a thing all the way until the 1920s when Einstein made up his equation to do away with it because the ether proved that the earth was not moving. And we can get into that, the Michelson-Morley experiment. So they either had to do away with the ether or they had to say the earth was not moving. So they tried to do away with the ether, but the ether is a thing. And what it is it's a gas-like superfluid that starts out not as dense at about 50,000 feet. But as you hit 73 miles up, which is about 385,000 feet, you hit the dense part. It gets really dense and thick. And this is why they have two-stage rockets, because they plow into that blue ether, and you can see it. One of the Falcon launches, I'm going to send you guys the stuff. If you really want to know the truth, I'll send it to you. But
Yeah, please do.
the Falcon launches, you can see when they move from the Earth oxygen-rich environment into the ether environment, and it turns blue. And it looks thick. It almost looks like water moving behind them as they're
Okay.
going up through it. And it's so thick, it gets so thick and dense that they press into it as far as they can. And then what they do, according to the National Reconnaissance Office and according to NASA, they deploy the nose cones of the rockets, open up and deploy a mylar balloon that fills with hydrogen or helium, either one of the two. And it is connected to a satellite that they've built, and it comes out of the nose of that thing. And in the ether, it's deployed in that. That's where the satellites are deployed. The ether current is moving in a circular pattern over the Earth, just like the wind current moves in a circular pattern. This ether current is what moves the sun and the moon around in this, and it moves our satellites around. And that's why our first satellite system was called Corona. And the first satellites, the Echo 1 and Echo 2, that NASA says they admit they are on mylar balloons. I document all this, okay? And they try to tell you, oh, yeah, we deployed a mylar balloon in outer space. But outer space, outside of the Earth's atmosphere, is supposed to be a negative 17 torr vacuum. You put a mylar balloon with helium or hydrogen in a vacuum chamber and just crank it down to -5 or 3 or 2, and you're going to get the thing collapsing. So it's they tell the truth again, documented screenshots from the National Reconnaissance Office and from NASA. This is how they do it. Satellites are on balloons. And that's why when the balloon satellite came over the United States at a low enough altitude that we could see it,
Yeah.
the Chinese one, it's not a shocker it's on a balloon. That's the way they've been doing spy satellites since the 50s and 60s.
On balloons.
On balloons.
Wow.
And this is in the declassified government documents. This is not even my opinion at all.
Dean, you advocated for creationism. Do you believe that evolution should be taught in the Alabama course of study to our public school students?
I would be fine with that if you taught both side by side. That would be fair to me. If you didn't favor one or the other, but you taught them both side by side and let the students, as they learn about both, figure out what they want to believe instead of indoctrinating them. I believe you put up God's creation story in accuracy next to the evolution story and the bunch of nonsense that it is. And most kids know deep down in them, when they see both side by side, they know that they were not descendant of a monkey, but that they were a special creation of an all-powerful, mighty God.
So it's your belief, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, that the dinosaurs like died in the flood or something, them and the woolly mammoths?
A lot of them did. A lot of them died in that. I mean, the Bible talks about dinosaurs, talks about creatures that had tails that were as big as trees. I mean, so and we have discoveries. I mean, there's the creation museum out in Texas that they have paleontologists that have gone out and found dinosaur footprints in the same strata as human footprints. There's no such thing as 68 million years ago the dinosaurs died because there was a meteor hit. That's all, again, baloney. We've got evidence. There's dinosaurs that have been found still with soft tissue in them. These are documented facts. So the evolution story, the Big Bang theory of how the universe came to be, the whole thing about a meteor killing the dinosaurs 60 million years ago, all that is theory. It is not fact, and it's not based in fact. It's not based in what we've discovered. I mean, that's why they try to bury stuff like dinosaurs with soft tissue, but all that's come out because they keep finding it. They keep finding these things, and they found woolly mammoths up in Siberia, buried solid frozen under the ice still with green grass in their mouth and in their stomach. They didn't get killed by a meteorite. And again, it's just ridiculousness. But I still don't have a problem if you were to teach a kid both sides of the story and let them pick. I can tell you what the majority of them are going to pick. They're going to know one is BS and the other one is the way it is. There's too much intelligent design in this beautiful creation of God to show that it had to be a God who made this. And I think you see, this is why the socialists who are anti-God wanted to get control of our education system, because they wanted to be able to indoctrinate kids. They didn't want kids to be able to see both sides. And that's why they push Christianity out, or intelligent design or creationism. They want to push that out and only have evolution and anti-God theories in there, so that they could influence kids. And this is what they've done. They've been very successful at it. But again, I believe in fairness. I mean, especially with public education, give somebody, if you don't give both sides of the argument on anything, you push only one, then you're not trying to educate, you're trying to indoctrinate. But if you give them everything that's out there, here's all the theories on creation, let's say, and let them pick, then you're doing education because you're teaching them to think about things critically and form their own ideas and opinions on things instead of saying this is the way it is and you can't look at that other side over there.
Look, I got one more question for you on this. What do you think that you said? You're talking about the moon a while ago. Like, I think you said something about plasma or something. So, do you think there's something that controls the tide, or do like when the oceans come in?
I believe the tides have to do with the fountains of the great deep that the Bible talks about. And that's
The
a
fountain.
whole, the fountains of the Bible talks about in the days of Noah, there were two things that happened that caused the earth to flood. The fountains of the great deep were opened up, which, like the Mariana Trench, that would
Hmm.
be one of those openings that the fountains of the great deep were open. And then the windows of heaven and doors were open. So that we had three sources of water in the days of Noah. You had the rain, you had the water from above the firmament, from the heaven of heavens where God's throne is, and you had the waters of the great deep that were opened up. So the great deep is what way below everything, even the depths of the oceans that we know. Those were opened up and the world was flooded quickly. And that's been proven, of course, that geologically that happened because everywhere on Earth, every culture tells about this great flood that happened, and the way the sediment was laid down shows it had to be massive amounts of water that did it. So that's a whole other situation there. But what'd you say? I'm getting
So I'm asking about the moon controlling
the
the
moon. Oh yeah.
waters.
Yeah, the fountains of the great deep. There seems to be a connection between what's called the mountain of God and the river of God and the fountains of the great deep. And I think the tides are controlled by from underneath and not from above. I mean, if you think about it, think about tides. If the moon's
Like
causing it, if the moon's
underneath
causing,
the earth.
huh? Yeah,
You believe it's controlled by there's water underneath the earth
yeah.
that's
There's
controlling it?
the fountains of the great deep. I think they move up and down, just like geysers kind of move up and down.
Oh,
And
okay.
right. And I think that's what controls the tides. Because think about this: if the moon were controlling the tides, how come they don't affect lakes, ponds?
Ah,
There's no tide in Lake Martin. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's a large body of water. So why is not the gravity of the moon affecting the tides of the Lake Michigan or Lake Erie, or it's only the ocean? And so to me, that's a bad theory about the moon causes the tides.
Dean, Wes Allen, the Secretary of State, has already announced that he is running for lieutenant governor. We're hearing many rumors that former Secretary of State John Merrill is running for lieutenant governor. And Ag Commissioner Rick Pate has indicated that he is looking at
Baby
running for
Twinkle.
governor. And there's, I mean, Twinkle Andrews Kavanaugh, the PSC president, is considering entering the lieutenant governor's race. Given the number of heavyweights that are looking at lieutenant governor or in the Republican Party, do you think you can win this?
Well, of course, that's going to be hard to do, but it's all going to come down to one thing, which it always does, is the money to advertise. And the money to advertise, and if we can get the voting machine problem fixed by 2026 would be a miracle, but it would be a good thing. I think I'd have a greater chance then. But here's the thing, Murrell's got serious problems. He's got serious problems with his morality issues. He's got serious problems with his lack of dealing with the true election security issues. Wes Allen's got pretty much not the same problems with his morality issues. I don't know anything about his private life, but Wes Allen was just, the next guy that was approved to take over Secretary of State. He had one job was to get, clean up the voter rolls and before the election and get the people who were not U.S. citizens off the roll, and he missed the deadline. Everybody talks about, oh, he got sued by the Biden administration and he's fighting back. That's again more baloney. If he would have got the people off the rolls before the deadline, because what happened was it's supposed to be 90 days before an election, he could get them off the voter rolls. But he waited until several days after that 90-day deadline. And so the courts had every right to say, oh, you can't do this. We're too close to an election now. And that's the law. So I have a problem with Mr. Wes Allen. Of course, he also was when he was in the legislature. He voted for the gas tax. He was appointed by governor, one of our crooked Republican governors, Bob Riley. So I'm just telling you, they got problems. Twinkle, she has one job at the Public Service Commission, and she didn't do that. And I think she's just bought and paid for. She's another Riley girl. And so the problem that those three have is that they are clearly establishment darlings connected to the Riley regime. And they need somebody in the race that's going to point that out. And I'm going to point it out to people. As for Rick Pate, I like Rick Pate a lot. I met him and hung out with him a little bit when I was running last time. I think Rick Pate is a great guy. So, he and I will probably get along just fine. And, I wish him the best and I hope to beat him. But, if Rick Pate was to win, I would not have a problem with that.
Hey, Dean, let me ask you about something we talked about a couple years ago. What did you think about the release of the JFK files?
You know what I liked about that the most is, again, it proved all of us so-called conspiracy theorists correct. You know, we knew, and there were documentaries out and things that really exposed that it was the CIA was involved in this a long time ago, and that it was the CIA that killed him. And so it's just all vindication, really, for the people who goes, yeah, it wasn't a magic bullet from way over there where Oswald was, and it wasn't some people on a grassy knoll. It was a full-blown CIA operation. I believe LBJ was in on it too. But again, here's what happens. They love to call us conspiracy theorists, but it seems like every time that the actual documents come out and the truth comes out, we seem to be right. Now, why is that? Because we actually do our digging. But true investigative journalism is when you dig. You don't accept the narrative, you don't accept the status quo, you go and you dig and try to find the truth. And we need more people like that. I appreciate you guys being diggers, like you have dug into the matrix and all the crookedness going on in Alabama politics. And Brandon, I have to say to you too, thank you you were always fair to me during the campaign, and I appreciated you being fair. But I didn't get that from most people. So I just say I like true investigative journalism, true investigations. Leaders should know what's going on behind the scenes. And sometimes if you're that kind of person, you're just going to be ahead of the curve a little bit. You're going to be ahead of the narrative that's accepted, and you're going to be looked at as a crackpot or a conspiracy theorist or whatever. But if you know your information's good, you got to stand on what you know. And I think it's just vindicated a lot of people,
Do you think Oswald was involved?
Oh, yeah, he was involved, but he was, they even said in the documents, it says he was a bad shot. He didn't make that shot from that building. And of course, if he did, with that caliber weapon, I hate to be so graphic, but JFK's head would have completely exploded from behind. It would have come from behind and pushed him forward, and his head would have been, I've shot watermelons with those caliber weapons. They just basically disintegrate pieces. So he was shot. Clearly, he got hit here with a smaller caliber weapon that took this part of his skull off and his head went back like this from something hitting him from the front. I mean, that's just as simple to look at as you can get. So it was obvious to most everybody that it was not that huge round from Oswald's gun. He was the
Dean, we didn't mean to keep you this long.
Hey, I don't mind. I like you guys.
Yeah, we went 90 minutes. Thank you so much for giving your time to us, helping out here.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Dean, I got one other thing before you go. Tell me about the when you got captured by the I think it was you was on a mission or something by the Muslims. I mean, man, that you was like blind. I listened to you speak of this the other day in Huntsville. You was like blindfolded or something and carried away with weapons. Would you think you're supposed to be beheaded?
Yeah, I was a little nervous. Let's just put it that way. But you know, they had held me, you know, in Nigeria, there's this constant switching back and forth between a Muslim in- controlled government and then a Christian kind of, I don't even not a serious Christian, but kind of a lukewarm Christian controlled government. And the South is more Christian and the North is more Muslim. And yeah, I've been there. There's constant persecution of Christians and churches there. So when I got there in the second time in 2006, when I landed, they immediately, because I was the only minister on the plane, I was the only white guy on the plane, the 747 at that point, and they immediately took me to a holding cell because everything was switching. Because when a new president comes in or it starts leaning toward Muslim, then they switch out everybody. And then so they switched out on me. I could see the stuff going on, and they put me in a holding cell for about 12 hours till about midnight. And I tried to even, you know, I knew to take nice, crisp $100 bills because, you know, one American dollar's worth at that time was worth like 134 naira. So I was going to try to bribe my way out. They wouldn't even take money. That's when you know, okay, I'm in trouble then. They won't take money. And I mean, they didn't even steal it from me. They just said, nope. And, you know, midnight comes and I'm just, three guys come to get me. One you could tell was an officer or, you know, higher ranking than two guys with AK-47s. They didn't blindfold me, but they took me on a walk. Now we're still in the airport, but they took me on a walk outside and we went out back and we walked into this hangar that was huge. It was several hundred yards long. And we walked through that hangar all the way down to a door. There was nothing in it. Then we went to another hangar and walk. I don't know how far we walked. It was just like, and it was just dark out there. And I had no idea where we're going. So I tried to talk to them. I was like, hey, what's up? You know, what's going on? They wouldn't even speak to me. And I thought, well, I'm in trouble. And I said, Lord, I said, if this is it, I'm ready to go. I know you and I've walked with you. And if this is how I'm supposed to meet you, then I'm ready for that. But if not, then you got to get me out of this. And we walk out of the last hangar and we're on the tarmac way out on a runway and there's a Dutch KLM aircraft sitting there. And I thought, they're not going to put me on that, are they? We walk all the way over to it. Again, a couple hundred yards, 300 yards. We walk over to it. They got the staircase there. They said, go. And I went up the steps and they set me. The only seat left on the airplane was in first class. And I sat down in first class and took me back to the United States of America. Well, via Amsterdam first, and then
Oh, I'm sorry. I had one other thing for you. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Right
no,
there.
that was it. That's what
Okay.
happened. Yeah.
Sorry, Brandon. I had one other thing before I forgot because I heard you talk about this the other day in Huntsville, and you triggered my memory a while ago, and you said something about Matrix. You said your wife and daughter had been targeted by them.
I don't know if it was them. I can't say for sure, but
Oh, okay.
somebody, my wife it was here in Opelika on Waverly Parkway, but basically it's a two-lane road and, you know, with going each direction. It's only two lanes, period. And she's going down the road and this van's coming this way and it gets in the lane here coming head on to her.
Mhm.
She moves over into the other lane, it follows her. She moves back, it follows her. As it gets right here next to her, she darts around it, gets away from it. That seemed to be very intentional to me. Like somebody was trying to, you know, and that much bigger vehicle in the vehicle my wife and daughter in, it would have been bad. And then during the campaign last time, I have my middle daughter who lives in Montgomery, Bethany. She went to a store, and it was in the middle of the day, to a store there on Taylor Road. And she had to pull in kind of on the side of the store and kind of in their little backside parking lot. And so there was like a fence here car here. She parks here. A car comes in, angled her in. Guy jumps out, comes around. She's getting out of her car. He tells her, get in the car now, and basically threatens her and everything else, trying to abduct her. And she said, it's a good thing I'm skinny, Dad, because there was like that much space between her car and his car as he could come in at an angle, and she slipped through that and ran in the store and called the police. Of course they didn't, that's the police in Montgomery, so they didn't get anybody. But those two situations coincidentally happened while I'm running for governor and trying to tell the truth across the state. So they may have been complete coincidences, or something really happened. Something was.
Okay, I just heard you
Yeah.
say something about that. I'm glad your family's okay after that, Dean.
Yeah.
Hey man, thanks a lot. I enjoyed this. I'll get you the full tape whenever it's done, and I'll break it down into little videos. And good luck in your run, man.
Well, I appreciate that very much, and I appreciate what y'all do. Thank you so much for having me on. And anytime y'all want to do it, I'll do it again.
Yeah, let's do this again.
All right. Well, God bless both of you, man. Good talking to you.
Thanks, brother.
All right.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Dean.
Yes, sir. Bye.